Welcome back. My guest in this segment is Scott Boys. He's the CEO of MPX Bioceutical Corporation, trading on the, or should I say traded, once traded on the CSE under the MPX. Now this merger that we were talking about, Scott, with Hadley and iAnthus, does this mean there's going to be two separate companies?
Yeah, we're spinning off the Canadian asset. So
right.
We have a Canadian license here, and we're working on another facility up in Owen Sound. So Hadley and the group will focus totally on the United States. Mm-hmm. They're US-centric, and that's where they want to focus. So we're going to concentrate on some products in the Canadian market, although we don't intend to compete with Canopy and Aurora and some of the big boys. So
okay.
A couple of niche markets. And then I've spent a lot of time in Europe the last 2 or 3 months. As you know, we raised a significant amount of capital there.
Yeah.
And the European market is kind of where the US market was from a capital markets perspective, and even from a consumer acceptance level where the US was 3 or 4 years ago. So there's 600 million people that are just coming onto the cannabis scene.
Right.
We think that represents a huge opportunity.
Without buffoons at the top to derail any logic as far as getting it deprohibited.
Well,
federally.
They have some of those over there too. So.
Okay, well that's good. It wouldn't be fair if they didn't. So then so iAnthus is buying all the shares of MPX Bioceutical.
Correct.
And then as part of that transaction, they're spinning out the Canadian assets and the European assets to a new entity, which will be private initially?
We'll take it public quickly.
We'll take it public. Okay, so that's great.
In fact, we intend to have it public by the time we close the iAnthus transaction.
Really? Well, I was going to say, this is new. This is great news because finally I get to participate in your company at the entry level, and now you're telling me that I'm already late.
And so will all the existing MPX investors, because they get shares in iAnthus as part of the transaction, and they also get a share in the new entity as well.
Yeah, so that's quite a lift from where you were. I mean, I obviously thought that MPX would one day grow to be a much bigger company. You've sort of been taken out of that mix, but now you've got a chance to sort of refocus the portfolio and develop it with some more specific.
You know, we were kind of in a rut, and the GTIs and the MedMen of the world have kind of emerged out of the US landscape. And iAnthus and MPX were both kind of being left behind. So in order to create the greatest advantage for the shareholders of both companies, a merger of some sort just seemed to be the way to go. And it creates a company with a $1.2, $1.3 billion market cap and allows Hadley to go forward and raise capital from institutional investors and so forth. It was a good deal for shareholders on both sides.
Right. So how many shares will MPX end up owning of iAnthus?
So it's a ratio of 1.65 to the iAnthus share.
Okay. So. Okay, so that's too difficult math for me to do on the spot without a calculator.
Well, the number of shares will depend too on the share price of iAnthus at the time of close.
Okay, so the European strategy then sounds like where the main focus is going to be with a bit of Canada involved.
Well, Canada, because we have the Panexia relationship for Canada.
Okay.
So we will develop that here as well. We have the Salus Biopharma brand. We'll continue to create that. Some of the international play will be able to bring in some hemp oil and for CBD products and cannabis oil, bring it in from the third world. We're looking for some third world sources now. Further refine it here in Canada, distribute it to the US market, to the Canadian market, and then distribute it internationally as well. But we're also looking at some opportunities in the UK. We've developed in the UK and in the EU. We've developed a bit of a pipeline over the past couple months.
Really? You sound pretty sort of excited.
Well, you know, I was over there 3 or 4 weeks ago, and who would ever have known that the Swiss market alone, hemp pre-rolls with 1% THC content is $1 billion business in Switzerland. So if you take that and you look at the CBD market and the full cannabis market over the whole continent and the UK, it's a massive market. It's going to be larger than the US and Canadian markets put together.
Wow.
And we also have a license application in Australia that's pretty well advanced, and they're looking to export to other countries as well. So.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, so then what are the big apart from concluding this transaction, what are the big next steps for this new entity that you're going to be heading up?
Well, concluding the transaction is going to take a lot of work. It's probably going to be January before we see it closed at the earliest. But we've already created we call it MPX International, MPXI. It's been created. We're going to get some seed funding into it initially. It starts out with $4 million US as a result of the transaction, but we'll go out and raise some capital, get it listed probably on the CSE, and be ready to move forward with a full business plan that we'll talk about a little bit later on.
Right. Yeah. Is it your opinion that the EU will go completely recreational and medical in due course?
You know, look what happened in Florida. It was CBD only, and then it's a little more medical, and then the medical opens up, and then eventually it'll go rec. And I see the same kind of process happening in the European countries. But then again, I was in the UK in May. We hosted the Cannabis Europa conference. We were one of the sponsors. And the panel there talked about it going medical in the UK in 2 years. Mm-hmm. It's going medical November 1st.
Right.
So yeah, under some limited scales, and it'll just advance. And I see the same processes happening there, but it's key to get in and get an install base. To
yeah,
get
show me a British politician who runs on a pro-cannabis, anti-Brexit platform, and I'll show you the next Prime Minister of the UK.
It's probably true.
So who do you think, so in the North American matrix, and actually globally, Canada is the leading sort of standards definer in the industry. Who would you say that is currently in Europe?
It's hard to say. Germany, of course, has got a program, but everybody's trying to run in there and fill it out. Malta is emerging as a key producer. It's not easy to get a license there, but you can get a license, and they're part of the EU, so that would allow them as a low-cost producer to move into the EU. You're seeing some of the Eastern European countries now are coming out with, we were actually interviewed by a group from Montenegro that want develop facilities there. So anybody that's got EU access, you're going to have programs. Spain is already advanced. When we were at the Cannabis Europa conference in May, there was 30 countries attended that conference. So you can just see how quickly the whole thing is emerging globally, not just in North America. And Canada set the pace, and it's probably accelerated the pace.
Sure. So what's the total market size, population-wise, of the area you're targeting there?
It's about 600 million.
600 million. So in fact, when Americans say that America is the largest market, it's actually the European Union.
America is the largest quasi-legal market.
Right.
But I'm sure the preponderance of cannabis in the UK and in EU is as large as it is in North America, maybe even larger in some cases.
Sure, you bet. So should I buy MPX shares today, or should I buy iAnthus shares today, or should I buy both? Like, how, as an investor, I'm hearing about this, I'm loving both companies, what should I do with my money?
Well, I think you could buy either share, and you're going to benefit from it, because the companies are going to emerge together.
Right.
It will be a combined entity. It'll move together. The integration will be very quick. They've got their management teams. We had our management teams. They're East Coast focused. We were West Coast focused, although we were moving into the East Coast. They will really be a national company now. So buy iAnthus shares, buy MPX shares, you'll win on both sides.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's great, Scott. We'll leave it there for now. Congratulations on the combination, and we'll come back to you soon and hear more about this new entity.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Great to see you again.